Hello everyone. I decided to focus on the content enhancement routine of the concept comparison routine. So what that is eventually we will create a comparison table, which I have here, and we will go over our linking and our cue do review with our linking verb, our linking wordage of comparing. So what I focused on was View from the Summit, which is Sir Edmund Hillary's story. And the other story was the one from Tenzing, who was Sir Hillary's partner climbing up. So there's two different stories that we read about. And so what we're going to be doing with these two stories, now that we read them, we're going to go over comparing. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Comparing is communicates targeted concepts. Okay, that's the C. The O, obtain the overall concepts. The M, make a list of known characteristics. The P, you are going to pin down like characteristics. A, you're going to assemble like categories. R, you're going to recognize unlike characteristics. I, you're going to identify unlike categories. N, you're going to nail down a summary. And G, we're going to go beyond the basics. And you might be thinking, wow, comparing, that's a big word. Like, that's a lot to remember. Well, it goes hand in hand with our comparison table that we have created right here. And if you can see up in the little corner up there, I have what everything stands for, so you can always refer to it. So in the classroom, this poster will be up behind me, so you can always check up on the wall. Otherwise, you know that it's on our worksheet right here. And when we are creating our comparison table, we're going to be able to modify this together and create it as a group. But for right now, this is the one that I have when I show you it. So when we're doing other stories, we might have more than one concept or two concepts or three or four or five concepts. We can expand this. So this is going to be fluid. It's going to be a work of art. So we're going to create this together as a group. But for right now, we're going to work on this one. Okay? So let's go back to our sheet. Okay? We have our first one, communicates targeted concepts. Okay? So if we go on to our sheet on here, I can look and there's a one, concepts. So I have two different concepts. My two concepts that I'm going to focus on are going to be Sir Hillary's report of climbing Mount Everest and Tenzing's report of climbing Mount Everest. So we're going to focus on those two. Okay? And so since I know those are my two ones that I'm going to be, I also can modify this too to make it a little easier. And instead of just saying Sir Hillary, it would be a famous climber versus a experienced climber, which would be Tenzing. Okay? And so what I put as my overall concept is climbing Mount Everest. So hopefully you can see that. And so the reason I did that is because it takes an experienced or a famous climber to be able to do that. And they have two different stories that we read about. We read about the view from the summit, and then if I pull it up real quick, we also read what is called The Dream Comes True from the Tiger of the Snows. It's a little harder title, but that was Tenzing's report. Okay? And so what we have to do is we did the concept, which we created, and then I already skipped to the O part, which was obtain the overall concept, which I said was climbing Mount Everest. Then I can move down to my M, which is make a list of known characteristics. So if I'm going to make a list of known characteristics, what I am going to be looking for are things that are similar. So I went ahead and I already created a list of some things that are similar, but when we are doing this together and we're creating our own, we would do this as a group. So the first thing I did was characteristics that I could find under an famous climber from reading his story and from Tenzing's. So what I found out was that he is a famous climber. He's not experienced. He wasn't born in a mountain area. He's famous. He's just famous for being able to climb mountains. He's born out of the area, so not in the area where Mount Everest is, which is in Asia. And he embellished his trip, which means that he over-glorified everything. He made things seem like they were way more intense. He made it seem like he was carrying Tenzing the whole time. He over-embellished. And then the last thing is his way of celebrating was by taking pictures, so having visual proof that he was there. Okay. When I go over to experienced climber or Tenzing's, I did some similarities, and I found not similarities. Sorry, I did some characteristics, and I found that he was born within the area. He had been climbing since he was 12 years old and had been doing it as a job as a tour guide. He really focused on the critical acclaim. So he focused on the things that were very difficult within his story rather than just the things that actually seemed challenging. So he talked about the reality of climbing a mountain being difficult for anybody, not just the two of them. And then lastly, his souvenir was that he focused on 2 rocks. He picked up 2 rocks instead of taking pictures, and that was his thing. And then he was in there holding the axe with the flags. So he was more of a symbolic climber. It was more of a ritual for him to climb than the glory it was for Sir Hilary. Okay, so I did like characteristics. Okay, which would be our A. Okay, which would be assemble like characteristics. Okay, so my like characteristics that I found out were that they were both climbers. They both had been climbing for a while. They both were able to make it to the top. They both celebrated at the top by giving each other handshakes and high fives. And they both journeyed there on the same day and arrived at the same time. Okay? And so what I would do after that then is move on to my next one, which is record unlike characteristics. So I'd move right down here to my record unlike characteristics. So first off, his unlike characteristic was that Sir Hilary, the famous climber, had to be there first. He said that his obstacle that he climbed was 40 feet tall, meaning that he was over-embellishing it, and he had to take pictures, so he wanted a lot of visual proof. He also said that he had saved Tenzing's life by knocking ice off of his breathing mask, which Tenzing then rebukes and says that he didn't in his unlike characteristics. So now if I go to my experienced climbers characteristics, I would go down here and I would look at that he was, he said that they both had a buildup of ice throughout the time, that there was no real danger in his story. He had 2 rocks, and his whole experience was more of an experience of a passage, a rite of passage, than it was for Sir Hilary, sorry. So the unlike characteristics are that the types of souvenirs that they took, their style of climbing the mountain, like who wanted to get there first, are the 2 unlike categories. The like categories are the ways that they celebrate together, the hardships that it took to get to the top, the ways that they took to get to the top, and their climbing experience. They both had climbing experience. Okay, so we're going to focus on now moving on to the N, nail down a summary. So I have that both of them are climbers, and I have their experienced climber, who is Tenzing, and I have a famous climber, who is Sir Hilary. And so I put down as my summary is that regardless of if you are a famous or an infamous climber, climbing Mount Everest can be a very difficult task. The journey is full of challenges and can be embellished regardless of being an experienced or inexperienced climber. Both Sir Hilary and Tenzing had a lot of challenges that they had to overcome, and at the end of the day, they both climbed the mountain at the top, regardless of their differences throughout their stories. Okay? And then, so now what I would need to move on to is, now that I nailed down a summary, I need to go beyond the basics, okay? So I'm going to kind of fold this right here so you can see it a little bit better. Go beyond the basics. So what you are doing for going beyond the basics is you are going to try to dig deeper. I want you to think more about what is going on with the story that we can find out. So what I want you to think about is, what is the difference between someone who is born in an area like Asia with mountains that they need to climb, so being where you're born and where you grew up, where you're native from, what is the difference in your ability to climb a mountain than it is for someone who's born somewhere else? So do you think that Tenzing had way more opportunities and the challenges seemed less difficult because he was native to the area? Or do you think that Sir Hilary's challenges were more difficult just because he was a less experienced climber and he was not native to the area? So what I want you to do for the extension is kind of write similarities and differences about their backgrounds that may have affected their ability to climb Mount Everest. Okay? So what we did is we have filled out everything within our comparison table. We've gone through all the different parts, and by going through all the parts, we have also gone through comparing. Okay, so we have communicated the target concept, we've obtained the overall concepts, we've made a list of known characteristics, we've pinned down the like characteristics, we've assembled the like characteristics, we've recorded any unlike characteristics, we've identified unlike categories, we've nailed down a summary, and we've gone beyond the basics. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to be able to create your own comparison table. I will have a template available, but I'll make one online so that you can create and add your own things into it. So you can create your own to the side if you decide to have 3 topics or 4 topics, and we will modify this as we go. So your job is to start writing down and doing comparing. It's comparing right here. You're doing that for our comparison table with our story, View from the Summit by Sir Edwin Hillary, and The Dream Comes True from the Tiger in the Snow by Tenzing Norgay. Thank you.